Thank you, everyone. After hearing the testimony, live testimony of people of Gaza, the urgency of stopping this slaughter is greater than ever. It was great on October 8th, 2023, October 9th, 2023, and every day since then. It's been mentioned that the Israeli army has killed 37 members of my family thus far. This doesn't include family members who have died because of the inability to access proper medical care, to be able to treat otherwise treatable diseases or illnesses or anything that we take for granted in the United States. My family is a very old Gaza family. We can name our relatives going back to the early 17th century. Of course, there are generations, centuries of relatives from before that. So Gaza is very much in our blood, it's in our bones, it's everywhere for us. In early October 2023, my family, which lives in the center of Gaza, thought they were largely safe. Some of them received evacuation orders or orders to leave, and many of them did, moving to points south of the Strip, Deir al-Balah, which is in the center, Khan Yunis and Rafah in the south. And what the people who moved there found was death and destruction in safe zones. The adult daughter of a first cousin of mine, was in her home in Deir al-Balah, very much a safe zone. Unannounced, in late October 2023, an Israeli bomb was dropped on her home, killing both her husband, one of her daughters, and an in-law. Nadia Reyes, my cousin, was in her late 20s. She was an industrial engineer who specialized she worked for an organization that specialized in making prosthetic devices for people who had been disabled, harmed in previous Israeli attacks on Gaza. Other relatives who stayed in Gaza include a family, cousins who lived next to my aunt's house. Unannounced, without any warning, a bomb was dropped on the house that immediately killed 8 people. There were 3 generations of family living there, the oldest being 72, down to the youngest being 8 years old. Among the cousins who were killed were 2 who were both doctors. One, Mosaida, who was 32, who had just returned from England a few weeks before, after he received specialty in women's health. Another, his sister, who was a couple of years older, Arib, was a dentist who was also an artist. They had you can't really see them here in this photo so well if you have it focused in. They didn't have anywhere to go, really, and anyway, they were needed for their medical expertise, and so they stayed. They were bombed on a Sunday. One of their, two of the kids in the family, this is an extended family, there were 7 floors on 7 stories. They waited a day before they could try to dig them out because of the threat of bombing, and also because of the inability to find a bulldozer. On the second day, they were able to start digging people out, and they were able to clear rubble, and they were able to take the bodies of 4 people from the family. An Israeli tank showed up, told them to disperse. They didn't disperse quickly enough, and the tank fired upon them, and the 2 people who were digging, their family, their parents, their siblings, were killed immediately. There are plenty of other stories of this happening all throughout the Gaza Strip. Eventually, some of my family who had moved to quote-unquote safe zones in the south decided that it was better for them to return home. Even though their homes were largely destroyed, they still offered more shelter in the center of Gaza than they were potentially subject to from the south. Right now, with the latest news that the Netanyahu government has announced, and the Trump administration seems to passively endorse by saying, well, it's their own business, despite the fact that the United States government and too many governments around the world, particularly in Europe, are supplying and bankrolling this slaughter. The Israeli government is planning on attacking and taking over the city of Gaza. So my family now is waiting for what might happen. They don't know if they're going to be dispersed. They don't know if they're going to be killed. Most of them have been kept very close to home. They are hungry. They don't go to the aid centers, which of course are death traps anyway, simply because they know that if they travel to the distance required to try to get assistance, they could be killed. So it's an impossible situation, and what we are calling for is an end for this all. No nonsense, temporary ceasefire in order for the Israelis to get what they want and then start the war again. We need to stop this attack, this genocide immediately. This is not a joke. This is not something that needs to be negotiated slowly. This is not a time to say, oh, we're trying to come up with the right words. The right words are simple. There's one word: stop. One telephone call from President Trump, telephone calls from Senators Schumer, Gillibrand, other senators who sit passively and lament, oh, this terrible situation. They can say stop. That's all it needs. They can work out the details later, but now we need the slaughter to stop. The genocide, the starvation, the famine to stop. And with that, I pass on to the next person.